Welcome everyone to our Pan Ohio Hope Ride May Enrichment Series. My name is Stacy. I'm the volunteer chair for the Pan Ohio Hope Ride. We're going to have some great event announcements coming up after this, but I want to get kind of right into our panel discussion here tonight because we have some great information to help us all get ready for this cycling season. Even if you're already out riding, this is great information for when you're out on your own riding, what you should do to get your bike prepared for the Pan Ohio Hope Ride or any other rides that you're doing this summer, and what you should take with you and all that. So I don't want to spend too much time here, but before we get into this, as you all know, we like to start all of our sessions with a mission moment or something that reminds us why it is that we do what we do. So I'm really excited tonight to introduce our featured Why We Ride story tonight. A writer from Cincinnati, Todd Wesley. I'm going to let him tell his story and introduce himself and how long he's been with Pan Ohio and why he does what he does. But I just want to let Todd kind of kick us off tonight. So Todd, I would just ask if everyone else could mute your microphones during this time, just so there's no background noise and we can all give full attention to Todd. And I'm excited to turn it over to our featured writer this evening. Tell us why you ride, Todd Wesley.
Thanks, Stacy. I'm not a big fan of talking, especially about myself. About 7 years ago, I got diagnosed with 2 tumors that were on my lungs that ended up being cancer, and went through chemo and radiation to try to shrink them. I was very fortunate enough that during that process that it not only shrank them, it got rid of them. So I didn't have to have surgery. So I know I'm very blessed to be a cancer survivor, because there are many people, and we have many loved ones that unfortunately are not with us because of that horrible disease. But that's one of the reasons I ride. And when I got diagnosed, someone that's ridden Pan Ohio, I want to see Jeff's at 12 or 13. I don't know what it is, but I know it's up there. But Jeff always did the Pan Ohio. I always donated to him. He always tried to get me to ride. I just never had the time to do it. Jeff always seems to get me to do things I don't want to do. But when I got diagnosed, I talked to Jeff, and he was one of my first calls. And, he told me I was going to beat it. And I was just not feeling too great. But he made me promise that when I beat it, that I would ride to Pan Ohio. And I'm very blessed that he made me make that promise, because it's an awesome event. And I've met some wonderful people. And I said I was going to do it for 5 years and then stop. You can't stop. It's just a wonderful event, and I love the people. I love the event, and I've got to meet and develop some great friendships because of this. So I feel very blessed to be involved with this event.
Thank you, Todd. We are so delighted to have you as part of this event. I got to laugh when you say you were going to do this for 5 years and then stop, but you can't stop, because, I was going to do this once. This was a once in a lifetime experience for me. And we're going on 15 now. I think I was going to be done after 5, and then I was going to be 10 and done. And, here we are. You can't stop. But thank you so much for sharing tonight. We are so glad that you're with us and that you are one of our champions of hope. I know Jeff, unfortunately, isn't going to be able to join us tonight, but he's become one of our champions of hope this past year as well. And we're so honored to have you ride alongside us in this fight. And I just want to thank you so much. I know you said it's not your favorite thing to share your story, but you have a great story and we're glad to hear it. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. And, congratulations to you for getting past it and being here riding with us. We really appreciate your joining us tonight and being part of the Pan Ohio family. So
Thanks,
with that, I do want to kind of move on to our presentation. A couple quick housekeeping notes tonight. We have a couple of raffles coming up at the end of the evening. So Alyssa Hancock is going to be taking attendance this evening. So if you have something on your username that does not indicate a full name, like, iPhone or just a first name or something, Alyssa may be reaching out to you to make sure she gets your full name for that. We're going to have one raffle. Everyone that's a registered POHR participant tonight will get a couple of incentive points just for joining us tonight. And we'll have a raffle for 5 additional incentive points at the end. And then if you're a guest joining us tonight, we also have a raffle just for you. Since you're not going to get incentive points, we have a raffle for you to win some awesome ACS determination swag bags. So really excited to see you tonight. We have some great information. I'm going to turn it over to our hosts. Like I said, unfortunately, Jeff couldn't join us tonight. So Bill's flying solo tonight, but I know he'll do an awesome job of that. But we do want to make this interactive. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat as you go along. And if we have some time at the end, we might have some people come off mute and ask questions as well. But for now, I'd ask that everyone keep themselves muted, drop your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring those and making sure we get those to your panelists. Make sure we get attendance. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill. He can tell you a little bit about himself and his PanOhio journey, and then he will introduce all of our panelists. I'll just pull up their pictures before I turn off this presentation. Really excited tonight to have Nickie, Ted, and Chet with us to share some great tips for us on bike maintenance. And again, whether you're riding PanOhio this year, some other charity ride, or you just want to learn about how to take care of your bike for your own riding, we're excited that you've joined us here tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Bill, to introduce our panelists and take it away.
Thanks, Stacy. So many of you know me. I'm also a cancer survivor. Todd, I'm so glad that you did ride the PanOhio because it was how I met you, and I look forward to riding with you every year. So you're one of the people I look forward to seeing again. So unfortunately Jeff isn't here tonight. He's my I also met Jeff on the ride, and we've become very good friends. This is this ride is more than just just riding your bike and more than just raising funds, although that's very important. It really is. It is a family. I mean, we all get to know each other, and it's great. So tonight we're talking about bike maintenance. We have 3 great speakers, great panelists who are going to help us out with this. Many of you know Chet. He's been working on bikes on the ride. He's one of our top mechanics, and you see him everywhere along the route. It's always nice to know that he's there. Ted is one of our longtime riders. If you've ridden before, you've probably talked to him at some point along the ride, or in the evenings or whatever. He's been around, and great guy to talk to. Nickie's new to us. She's never ridden PanOhio, but she brings a different perspective. So we have a treat tonight. We have 3 very different perspectives, I think. So with that, we'll get into it, and I'm going to start off with just a simple question to each of you. What got you into fixing bikes? We'll start with you, Chet, because I'm interested to know that too.
Well, I don't have any great story. Just I'm mechanically inclined, and I love bikes, and that's it. Pretty much needed a job, and here I am.
So were you working on your own bikes, or just you just got a job working in a bike shop?
I probably broke a bike and realized how expensive it was, and then decided to go and get a job there. So
cool.
Yeah. How
about you, Ted?
Well, I'm slightly more involved in that. I just, as you said, been riding PanOhio for a while. And then I retired from working at Patel. And after a couple months of just laying around, forgetting which day it was, Sandy's like, you need to find something to do. So then I had met Chet through the ride and went and talked to him over at Bike Source, and ended up working for him. And I'm mechanically inclined also, and he taught me all the ropes, thankfully. Thanks, Chet.
All right, Nickie, what's your story? How'd you get into fixing bikes?
I don't know that I'd call myself mechanically inclined like the other two. So that'll be my different perspective. So I work at Up and Running. So if you need to know anything about running shoes for the other event, but I also race as a triathlete. So out of necessity, having my own bikes and riding a lot, you have to learn how to take care of your own bike because, you know, bike shops are busy and you can't always run around the corner. So really out of necessity for my own riding and kind of tinkering in the garage with friends and my coach, I've kind of picked up on what I need to do to keep my bike moving smoothly throughout the season. So I don't have to knock on the bike shop every week and give them a 6-pack of beer and say, please.
So Nickie, is there anything you check on your bike every time you ride?
Oh, I mean, I usually make sure the chains loop pretty well. I have spare kit with me. Tires are pumped. Very simple things, I would say, just to assure that I might, you know, I can have a ride where I might not need to stop and, you know, change my tube or anything like that. So, yeah.
Chet, anything to
Sure,
add to
there's
that?
way more that I should be doing, Chet.
Chet, anything to add to that? What else you should be doing before the ride?
Sometimes simple is better. No, she knows what she's doing. That's it. I mean, if you're checking your tire pressure, maybe also checking your tires. You know, when was the last time you even looked at your tires to go on a ride? You know, they're really thin rubber and there's a good chance there's a big cut there that you didn't know was there. And if that spinning your tire slowly and looking at it saves you, you know, a 2-hour in the ditch, then I say that's worth it, you know, for an extra 30 seconds or so. But yeah, tire pressure and your chain is lubed, and those are the big ones. That your helmet's buckled.
That's a good one. Hey Ted,
Yeah.
what do you carry with you on the bike, mechanic wise, you know, maintenance wise?
Well, the main things I carry with me are like spare tube, tire changing levers, some sort of air source. Usually have a multi-tool on me just in case something happens, of course. A boot, some kind of boot material. I usually bring along Tyvek material cut out of like shipping, like a FedEx shipping envelope. Works good for that. Then the other main thing I usually carry along is some electrical tape. It comes in handy sometimes.
Duct tape is always the one for me.
Yeah, what Ted's talking about with a boot, if anybody needs to know, you know, sometimes you might get a small puncture in your tube, and that's why you would have a, you know, a patch kit. And sometimes you get a big slice in your tire that once you put a new tube in, your tire won't hold that tube anymore. So Ted's referring to what we call like a tire boot. That would be maybe an emergency fix to get you to the nearest stop, maybe to get you home, but a dollar bill or a Cliff Bar wrapper or something to keep the tube from protruding out of your big gash in your tire. So they have store-bought tire boots as well, but most of the time I would say you should probably have some cash on your person in your bike bag, and that also works. If you a $20 bill is an expensive tire boot though, so maybe you do want a Cliff Bar wrapper. So if you have $20 bills in your tire, then come see me. I'll help you fix it.
Awesome. So when you do get a flat along the side of the road, and I'll throw this out to anybody who wants to answer, what are some tips for fixing it, you know, quickly without causing yourself too much delay or hassle?
Practice.
We have Brent Evans around, or his wife, because they're the fast ones at it.
They won last year's channel.
I ran out a spare once. I think I ended up with 2 flats on a ride. So I'd say make sure you have your phone and phone a friend, but I called my dad and he told me to call AAA. So I'm not sure if that works, but
AAA AAA does offer that service now as part of most people's package. So yeah, I think that is a good option actually, but
At
practice
the
is
time,
honestly,
I was slightly mad and I hung the phone up. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I hear if you tip them, they'll also drop you off further along in the route.
See, this is good to know. I learned something too.
Okay.
I'd go with those guys practice. We actually have a bike group through the store and a beginner triathlon group, and part of it is bike maintenance. And honestly, when I say bike maintenance, we literally sit there and they have to take their front wheel off and rear wheel and take it apart and learn how to put it back on, because the front wheel is pretty easy, but when you have to get the rear wheel off with gears, for those people that aren't real familiar, it can be a little nerve-wracking and frustrating. So I agree with those guys, practice. So we have them take both wheels off and take the tire off, take the tube out and put it back in. So.
Yeah, everybody practices riding, but I'll bet very few people actually practice changing a tire. Something that, especially if you're going to be riding alone, you need to know that. So, and at some point during the ride, you may end up riding alone, and, during your training rides and things like that. So while we're still on tires, how do I know when a tire needs to be replaced? Anybody?
Usually a lot of tires have wear indicators on them, like their car tires. But if you don't have that kind of brand of tire, just take a good look at them, like Chet was saying earlier, and see how much tread you got left or how nicked up they're getting with all the debris on the road that we have fun running over.
one of the big things I would always notice when people were bringing a tire in was that they're often threadbare and people don't even realize it, and that's why I really encourage people to check their tires periodically. That's easy. If you're threadbare, that's a no-brainer that they're worn out. But if they don't have a nice crown, typically it'll have a curved profile to the top of the tire, and if it's gone flat across the top, and that's a good indicator that you've worn away a good bit of rubber. If you don't see those little dimples as wear indicators, then and you can look at your back tire versus your front tire as the tire, as you accumulate miles, and you'll start to, the front one's going to last forever and the back one's going to wear, and then you yourself can sort of see how a tire wears. You could probably replace your back one twice for the time you replace one front one. Just more weight, more traction, more power. And so you can kind of monitor it as you see it, watch the back one wear versus the front one, and it'll help you get some feedback that way.
That's a great tip. So what about lube? How often should I lube my chain? And what should I use?
Well, I encourage people, I don't know, usually people aren't good lubers. Then we teach them how to lube, then they become the world's best luber, and their bike gets really greasy and dirty, and then we rein them in and get them back to where we want them. So as needed, I guess, is what I tell people. If you're doing what Nickie does, she's out for a 112-mile ride, you want to have, I'd say, lube it up, have some extra lube on there, because the last thing you want to do when you're hot and tired and grumpy is hear a squeaky chain and know that it's sucking energy out of you. So you could err on having extra lube. If you're just out for 25-mile rides throughout the week, you probably don't need to lube your chain, for 2 or 3 weeks. You study other people's chains and see what's over lubed and greasy and dirty. You hear a squeaky chain and you got to find yourself somewhere in the middle, hopefully. And that's a process, I think. The key is to lube it and then wipe off most of the excess. If you're heading into rain that day, then you want to then throw a bunch of lube on it. Or they make different types of lube that are thicker and tackier for wet days. And if you use that lube on a real dry, dusty day, then you're going to get all that dirt's going to collect in that tacky lube. But if you got 4 hours of rain that you have to ride through, then you want something that's going to persevere through those elements.
Ted, do you lube your chain during the ride? You know, we're riding 4 days, 328 miles. Do you lube it just before and then leave it go, or do you lube it every day?
I check it. If it looks like it needs, yeah, I'll lube it. You know, if we do like 100-mile ride and spend a windy, dust blowing day, then I'll definitely take a look at it and probably lube it then, or ride through, like Chet said, a bunch of rain, kicking up horse manure and stuff. Yeah, chain's definitely, a whole bike's going to need a cleaning then and lubed and that. I usually just use a basic tri-flow lube. That's good for most conditions.
What about cleaning your bike? How often do you clean your bike? And you know, do I just take a hose to it, or what's the best way to do it?
I just spray it with one of the bike cleaners that's out there, spray it down with and use lint-free like shop rags on it. Wipe it all down. You'd be surprised how much you get off of it sometimes.
Do you want to use these?
Anybody else got a thought on that?
What are your thoughts on a little bit of watered down simple green, Chet?
I like it. That's what we used to use at the shop, was simple
That's what I
green, and
use.
then
I wasn't gonna say I
And we-
used it in case you said it was bad.
No, we used to use simple green and pledge to polish it when we were done.
Yeah.
My only concern now is with any sprayable cleaner of any type, there's so many disc brakes out there now that you want to be really careful how you're applying this cleaning solution to your bike. You know, if you're physically spraying it and it's misting over and getting on your disc brake rotors, then you're setting yourself up for failure. You're going to get that material embedded in your brake pads, and they're going to squeal and won't stop you. So you want to be careful how you're applying it. You know, it wasn't really something you had to worry about with rim brakes as much, but now with disc brakes, it is a problem. So you got to be really careful how you're spraying and misting, and your polishes. Like if you were to use pledge as a polish, you need to apply it to a rag and then bring it to the bike, and don't be spraying your bike and misting all these chemicals over your rotors. It could be a bucket of warm soapy water. It could be simple green. It can be a store-bought bike polish. Any and all are fine. If you're taking a garden hose to your bike, you're just applying a lot more water and getting it in places where you don't want it. You're going to ruin your bearings. It's good for bike shop because they get to sell you new bearings, but you just want to be careful how much you're hosing.
So you mentioned disc brakes. What are the advantages of disc brakes, and what are the disadvantages other than getting stuff on them?
Well, I think it's like any technology. You probably don't need it, but once you get used to it, you never want to go back. They potentially stop you more powerfully, in all conditions in theory. So if you're riding through the rain and you went through a creek and your rim got wet, rim brakes wouldn't work as well as a disc brake. And that's kind of the main advantage. The industry is basically taking you there now, so you don't really have a whole, there aren't that many rim brake bikes out there anymore. But I think when you take a wheel out of a bike, it's harder to put it back in with a disc brake and for it not to rub sometimes. And that was one of the early major downfalls. They've gotten much better systems now, but yeah, people, if you touch it or get it dirty with chemicals or oils, then it can be, a weak link. But as long as you understand those things and stay away from them, then you probably have a much better brake system than you used to.
Any thoughts on that, Nickie or Ted?
I honestly, I mean, I agree with Chet. I actually just have disc brakes on my mountain bike, so I haven't gone into that world of realizing how nice they are. So, but from a few friends that have them, I would agree with Chet that it's maybe a little more difficult to take your wheels on and off and transport it. But like he said, if you're buying a new bike, you probably don't have much of a choice right now. So.
One thing I forgot to mention, say you do take your wheel out of a disc brake bike and it's a hydraulic disc brake. There's there's always a chance you're going to squeeze that hydraulic brake lever, and the pistons in your brake are going to go in further than they normally would because the rotor isn't in there to keep it. So then there's always a chance they don't retract as much, and therefore maybe you can't even get your wheel in because your pistons are advanced. So again, just an educational thing, and a bike shop would be happy to show you these things and ways to get around it. But say you take your wheel off on the side of the road like you normally would, lay your bike down, and it squeezes that lever and advances your pistons in because you're focused on your tire change, and then you try to put it back in and you're hot and frustrated and getting bit with mosquitoes, and now your pistons are too far. So these are great things that get someone knowledgeable near you that is happy to show you these things, or can show you how to pry them back apart and get your wheel back in. But the best thing would be not to touch it when the wheel's out, or be careful how you lay it. Just be very cautious about it. So
What else needs to be, checked or replaced on a bike? Chains, cassettes.
Cables. You always want to check the cable, especially before like a long weekend ride like Pan, Ohio. We've had it happen where we be riding along fine, and all of a sudden one of your cables will snap and you can't shift anymore, and you lose your front gearing or your back gearing, whichever, and then you got to wait for Chet or one of the SAG vehicles to come around.
I always kind of make sure everything's tight, like the headset, the front part of the bike. Not that it's common, but I've definitely, if you're riding a lot, things can loosen up. So you want to make sure everything's, you don't like pull your handlebars up and, they move or something like that. So before a big ride, I would say.
I think Ted's on it. Cables are something that I think even bike shops often overlook. You do a tune-up, you clean the bike, the customer is usually happy. Did they really check the, how it, the integrity of the cable? If you're shifting a lot and it's fraying inside, it's not really a visible thing to see. So maybe you need to know when you changed them last. Have you ever changed them last? It's a hidden thing that's hard to investigate sometimes. So, and it's also like eyesight. Eyesight goes badly so slowly that you sort of get acclimated to it. So let's say your cables are corroding inside or fraying, and there's extra friction in the shifter, and you're so used to it, it's gotten bad so gradually that you don't even know it's happening. But say you take it to a mechanic, he puts it up in a stand and immediately shifts and cringes because he feels all this extra resistance that shouldn't be there. But you're so used to it. And so that's a good thing. Another good thing, that just be sure and ask them about it when you take it in, that, do you think I should do my cables? And have an idea if you've ever done it or when the last time you did do it, and you guys can make a decision together. You think about how often you're shifting your rear shifter versus your front shifter. It might be 10 or 20 times more than your front shifter. Some people never shift their front shifter. Some people don't even have front shifters anymore, and so, but that rear one is in theory getting shifted hundreds of times a ride, and so it's being bent and back and forth and getting flexed, and it's going to fatigue and break sometime.
Some people don't shift the rear either. It's weird.
That's true. That's true.
So if I'm
We're
if I'm
here.
if I'm going to get a tune-up on my bike, should I take it in the week before the ride?
I think our bike shop's about a month out right now, so I would imagine most places in the world are. Chet, you would know more, but I'm pretty sure ours is a good month out.
Yeah, I mean, it probably depends on how good looking you are and what kind of beer you buy them. And yeah, most of them are overbooked right now. So you gotta, yeah, you want to cover your bases, set up an appointment early, yeah, don't walk in a week before and hope to get it back, because parts right now are really hard to get to. Maybe they can even do it, but if you need a new part, there's a chance they don't even have availability for those parts. So just try and keep all that in mind. Here in central Ohio anyway, there's also other big rides going on, that are gonna get people in the shop too, and rides that are, have a lot more people involved, and they're gonna have their bikes in for their tune-up before their ride. So you just keep all that in mind. I don't really, even as a mechanic, I don't really want to touch my bike the night before. I'd rather have it done a month before and have it working flawlessly. If you take it and get it back 2 days before you got to put it on a bus to go to Pan, Ohio, then you don't have a chance to work out any kinks or fine tune anything. So, I'd rather have it done 2 or 3 or a month ahead of time.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree with Chet. About a month ahead of time is good. And my shop I'm working at now, we're like 3.5 weeks out. So don't want to wait on it.
So we should probably call the bike shop now and say, hey, how long is it going to take? All right.
Yeah, you can always call and make an appointment and bring in the bike the day before. You don't have to let us keep it for that 3-4 weeks.
Very good. So if there's so Ted, let's start with you. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you think people should know?
One thing I was going to say about the disc brakes is a lot of times I see people putting their bikes in, like laying it down in the back of a SUV or something, with the back seat folded down. And when you're talking about disc brakes before, we always get told about keep the gearing up because you don't want to bend a derailleur or the hanger bracket in the back. But then you're laying it on the disc, so you got to be careful that way too. You got to just be aware of what's going on, I guess you'd say.
Nickie, anything we didn't cover that you think is important?
I guess one thing, it's a little off bike maintenance, but in terms of carrying things, and I do a lot of riding by myself, so I always have a rear light on. I think that's something that we often go out the door and it's like, oh, I forgot. And just in the world we live in today, the way people drive, I think it's important. I always wear road ID or some sort of ID with me. And I take my phone, and some money. I don't know. Those are like kind of my go-to things that I check off my list in addition to the maintenance part that I think is just as important, especially if something goes wrong. So.
Awesome. Chet, anything we missed?
Oh, there's probably 100 things we missed, but I think that's, yeah, I think that's good. We also didn't really talk about drivetrain wear, something to check periodically. If the more miles you put on, your chain will wear, your cassette in the back will wear, your chain rings up front will wear. Bike shop will have a tool that they can just set. It sets right in your chain. They can tell you if it's worn. So the more worn these parts get, the less crisp your shifting will be. If you break a chain, if it got so weak, just your performance goes down as these parts wear. So it's good to kind of know where you stand in terms of that wear. So, in theory, if you replace your chain frequently enough, which is relatively inexpensive compared to the gears in the back or the chain rings up front, So you could put 2 or 3 chains on a drivetrain before having to replace the more expensive parts. It's kind of the thought. But if you let your chain go too long, then the wear starts to exaggerate. So it's something, again, if you take it in for a tune-up, that they can check, and you guys can make a educated decision about that. I don't know if we talked about CO2 cartridges when you're changing your tires out on the road. You know, some people will have a hand pump, some people have CO2 cartridges, some people have both. You know, just I wouldn't go with one CO2 cartridge. I would take a couple. If you've never used one, I would buy an extra one and use it just to learn how to use it when you're not in crunch time. And like Nickie said, these clinics, it's invaluable, I think. You know, if someone's offering a clinic, go. Even if you have to pay, to have a professional right next to you changing your tire, you know, it's not rocket science, but it helps. There's also YouTube. You could probably YouTube it on the side of the road if you had to, but having to do it with someone watching you is invaluable, I think.
All right, one more question. What's the weirdest maintenance issue you've ever seen on a bike?
I'm gonna let Ted go. I'm gonna think about it for a minute.
Think about the weirdest ones I've seen, and a couple of times now is people with a single chain ring in front, and it's usually a young teenager that's been jumping her bike around, and they'll come in and that chain ring is just like half folded over. And they're like, I don't know what I did, of course. So they don't quite understand why you just can't fix it on the spot.
Nickie, have you seen anything weird?
I mean, I've had some stuff happen to me that I've had to get fixed. My crank arm has fallen off my bike while riding before, so make sure everything's tight and to spec.
Wow.
I blame the mechanic. It was not my fault.
That was actually, that question was in the chat. I just saw it there. What do you do if your crank arm falls off?
I was with a friend, and he luckily was a mechanic, so he kind of rigged it a bit, and I rode very carefully. I mean, he tightened it back on, but if you're not with someone that knows what they're doing, I think I'd probably phone a friend, unless Chet has better advice than that.
Well, if you're on Pan, Ohio, you can always call Chet.
Yeah, call Chet. There you go. Crank arm comes off, call Chet.
Yep.
That's probably the worst thing that's happened to me while riding. I think it's not very common, but
All right, Chet, you come up with something?
Oh, mine are probably on the personal side, you know, people with sore undercarriages, those types of, you know, mental coaxings. Those are the ones that get you on the side of the road, you know, too sore to sit down, those types of things.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. This was very informative for me. I hope it was for everybody else. And we'll see some of you out on the road. Nickie, I hope someday you'll join us.
yeah, and I have some friends from Up and Running joining, and I will unfortunately be out of town, but I look forward to doing it in the future. So yeah, thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Sure. Back to you, Stacy.
Thank you. And I was going to say, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to keep dropping them in the chat while we continue on tonight. There was a couple things too. Did we talk about what you check before every ride? I know some people answered that kind of in the chat. And I know we talked about what to bring, but like what are those things? It's the ABCs enough? Air brakes, chain? Or are there other things that you check before you ride? Ted? Every time you go out, or Chet, go for it.
Sorry, I think that's pretty good. You know, I honestly bounce my bike. You know, I'll physically jar it up and down, and you know, I don't know that you're going to find a loose crank arm like Nickie doing that, but I'm also more in tune to the bike. But you know, you might have a loose water bottle cage that would show up if you bounced it, especially one like on the back of a seat that might eject a water bottle, or you know, And if you hear extra rattling, it might tell you your front wheel is loose. It might tell you that your headset, your fork goes into the bike, that's loose. And just if you're just picking it up and jarring it, you may not understand it, but it doesn't hurt to. I think it helps me to, I can tell when things are loose for me. I have a little more training than most people in that manner, but I don't think it hurts to, if you found a loose water bottle cage, I think that's worth jarring your bike around a little bit. Yeah, tire pressure and chain lube, those are the biggies. In theory, your bike's not going to loosen up on you, but, it might someday.
Absolutely. And I just want to call out a comment that Leanne made in the chat that I think is important, that if you have a fall or a crash and you glance at your bike and you think it's okay, you should probably have a mechanic check over everything, not just what you think is wrong, because you never know what else might be wrong as a result of that crash that you didn't notice right away. Actually, my funny personal story is, I tend to be a little careless sometimes with the clipless pedals, especially if I'm in a group and I'm chatting and distracted, and I'll do that. Hey, we all stop and I'm, maybe take one foot out of the clips and lean the wrong way and fall over kind of stop. And I did that one day on a group ride, and a couple weeks later, I was riding a ride that actually got pretty hilly. I very rarely use my lowest gears, but it was a very hilly ride, and it was the first time in those couple weeks that I had gone into my very lowest of gears. And it turned out that falling over a couple weeks previous to that had bent my derailleur hanger just enough that when I shifted into my lowest gears, my derailleur got all up in my spokes. So anytime you drop your bike, anytime you fall or have a crash, make sure you give it a good once over, even if everything seems okay. I see Chet nodding. You may have some other good stories about that.
I was on the verge of mentioning that anyway, Stacy, that especially if you fall to the right, that's typically where your derailleur is, the derailleur mounts to generally a flex, malleable piece of aluminum that then mounts to your bike. And that little tiny piece is made to bend and break before your bike frame does. So if you were to fall on your right, say they load your bike in a truck to ship it, and they stack a bunch together and it gets bent. There are lots of reasons. If Nickie goes on a race out of state and she packs her bike and the airline smashes it, all these things can bend a derailleur hanger. So I think it's good to check it after a wreck. I really encourage people, if you're traveling to ride your bike, have your bike shop get you an extra derailleur hanger. Keep it with you in your suitcase. If you're on an obscure bike, or you're riding a Trek and I work at a Specialized dealer, I don't have your derailleur hanger. I maybe have a Specialized derailleur hanger, but I'm not going to have a Trek derailleur hanger. So I really, this $25 part might save you your entire ride. If you've trained all year, you've raised all this money, and then you snap a $25 part and nobody in town has it. But if you have it in your suitcase, then that's worth it, I think. So you don't have to carry it on your person necessarily, but take it with you. I think it's a really good part to buy and have, and I carry one with me on my mountain bike at all times in the woods. I've wrecked in the woods before, and I've taken my broken one off, put a new one on, and saved my ride and ridden home. So I'm not necessarily telling you to carry yours with you all the time, because it's pretty rare, but buy one and have it in your suitcase for big rides like this, I think is pretty important. The other thing, sorry, I'm talking so much, before a big ride especially, and periodically throughout the year, your pedals and your shoe cleats on the bottom of your shoe. Turn your shoes over, look at how worn they are. Ask someone who knows how worn they are. Look for missing bolts. There are a lot of times people show up and they have missing bolts, or they're loose. As your cleats get loose on the bottom of your shoe, it becomes harder and harder to clip out of your pedals because the cleat is rotating relative to the shoe instead of rotating with the shoe. So if you do a lot of walking, you're going to wear your cleats away, and then they don't engage in the pedal as well. So those are big safety concerns, I think. If you can't clip out, that's dangerous. So Take your shoes with you to the bike shop, have them look at them. If you have to buy a $30 pair of cleats, then so be it. But it's an often overlooked item in your repertoire, I think.
That is a great tip. And I think Daryl had a question or a comment.
Well, I was just gonna say your comment about bouncing the bike a little bit before you start riding is a good one. I think we forget that sometimes all of our accessories that don't have anything to do with the bike can sometimes interfere with the bike itself and your ride just as well as anything else. I've seen people ride, have their rides end because a bike rack snapped,
Yeah.
and then the bottom fixture of the bike rack gets into the wheel well or whatever. Same with straps. Anything that has a fabric strap, it might not seem like much, but fabric or even panniers, fabric rubbing against the tire could slow you down. It might not seem like much, but when your 20-mile-an-hour pace is down to a 10-mile-an-hour pace, just because some fabric is rubbing against your tire, that's gonna impact your performance, and it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, one thing I've had a couple of people I've been riding with, they're like struggling. It seems like, they feel like they're going uphill all day. And then, then they realize that their rim brakes have tilted a little bit and one side is rubbing against the tire the whole way. And, so they're basically riding their brakes. That's, something you can check really easily when you start the ride. Just spin the wheels a little bit. I always do that when when I'm pumping up my tires. I spin the wheels, make sure that they're not rubbing on anything.
Yeah, and I'll say as someone that rides in a group, we all have kind of an obligation to be looking out for the people that are around us. If you come up on somebody and you hear something odd, maybe tuck in behind them for a little while and see if you can figure out what's going on. And then if you see something rubbing, come up and say, hey, let's stop for a second and fix that. Everyone will be much happier if you look out after each other.
For sure. Thank you. A couple questions came up too in the chat about bike fits. Any comments? Nickie answered in the chat, if you're purchasing a new bike, you want to get a good fit, but then if anything changes, anything you want to add to that, Chet or Ted?
I'll chime in. I think bike fitting kind of comes and goes like fashion sometimes. For a while, we're charging $300 for a fancy bike fit, and your body is constantly changing. You age, you change shape and physique, and yeah, I mean, Nickie's going to be in her bike for 5 hours straight, and she needs to be comfortable in that, and going on Pan Ohio is a little different than that when you have you're stopping every 20 miles for food, and but if you purchase a new bike, hopefully someone's spending some time with you, ensuring that you at least have proper seat height. After, depending on how expensive your bike is, just sort of coaching you in your expectations here that, a bike fitting is such a vague term. If you want someone to spend 2 hours with you, you're going to have to pay some money, probably. If you buy a new bike, someone probably should spend 10 minutes with you, at least looking at you on the bike and talking you through some things. If you want someone to start swapping out saddles and changing stems, then you need to probably expect some money to exchange for that service. But, a lot of people have never had anyone look at them and they're perfectly comfortable. Some people, get a fit every 6 months probably. And yeah, you got to figure out who you are, I guess, in that game. But to be comfortable on your bike and have proper power through your legs and not tear up your knees, and a good fitter might see that you're throwing one knee way out, and that may be because of some weird thing with your saddle. So it takes a trained person to see some of that stuff, but you decide what your budget is and how painful you are, and you make your decision based on that, probably.
Awesome. How painful are you, right? How much do you want to put up with?
Yeah.
I know I think on my first bike, I put up with way too much pain with, wrists and shoulders and knees and whatnot. That, yeah, I think whatever you can do to make it more comfortable for yourself, you're going to be better off on especially on the longer rides. You know, it's fine when you're riding 20 or 30 miles, but when you get into 80, 100-mile days, and then, you know, in the case of some of these charity rides, multiple days, and especially on Pan Ohio for 4 days, those little things are going to catch up with you. So appreciate that. And yeah, I guess I have one last question for each of the panelists. Anything else you want to share? But I also just want to know, why are you involved in Pan Ohio? I think, first of all, I want to thank Nickie for being here tonight, and want to give a huge shout out to Up and Running in Dayton as one of our new sponsors this year. We're so delighted to have you on as a sponsor this year. And I'm just kind of curious if you could give us a quick rundown on why Up and Running Dayton's excited to be partnering with Pan Ohio this year.
Yeah, well, we're very excited, and thank you I'm so glad that you all reached out. Actually, one of my very good college friends works for ACS, and she put me in touch and said, hey, Pan Ohio is coming through Dayton this year, and we have some questions. Could you connect us with some other businesses? And the owner and I chatted with our owner, and we sat down, and, as we've heard tonight, we've all been touched by cancer in some way, some of us personally, and others, friends, family. And so coming through Ohio, we thought, well, we should get involved, which then we're involved with the C2C relay too. So we're super, super excited. And really we extend beyond the walls of the business, and that's what's at our core and our mission statement. So we're thrilled for it to come through Ohio. We have a lot of cyclists and triathletes that shop with us. And like I said, the biggest thing is giving back to the community. And having been touched by cancer myself, personally and family, in a lot of us at the store, we're thrilled to be on board. So, yeah.
We are thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for joining us this year. And thanks for your time tonight with your stories and your expertise. Ted, how about you?
Well, we started out years ago just volunteering one day, and that one day, half a day, actually turned into a whole weekend. And we liked the whole vibe of it, like Bill has mentioned, family feeling. And we've been riding ever since, and got into it also because Sandy's a cancer survivor. Her mom, both my parents passed away from cancer, and numerous other relatives. So it's an ongoing battle.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you so much for all you do, Ted and Sandy, for Pan Ohio. And I know I always like riding with you because it's nice to have an experienced mechanic alongside. Appreciate it. And then, of course, Chet, many of you may not know this, but when we started our partnership, Bike Source Columbus has been a partner with Pan Ohio kind of from the beginning. And Chet used to work for them. But even though Chet has moved on to other professional endeavors now, he still joins us as a volunteer each year, backed by Bike Source. So Chet, I was wondering if you could share a little bit about why you continue to come back to Pan Ohio year after year, and what this event means to you.
I guess it's pretty much like Ted said. From the first time I helped, it was just I love working on bikes. I like helping people, but there's definitely a family, just the way the ride's organized. You get to know people over the couple days. I've helped with a lot of other big rides, and they don't have the same family feel. They're good at what they do, but this ride's special that it, it is a little bit more family oriented and friendly, I think, and people are very grateful usually, and it's great to help people in their mission, to their journey through this, whether it's for themselves or for a loved one. And it's good to help, good to be able to help.
I got one more question for you, Chet. What's your favorite kind of beer?
I don't drink beer at all.
Oh,
water. Thank you.
okay. What do we tip you with? Come on.
I always
You get a $20 bill to fix your tire.
Cookies.
Andy Whitinger, who used to help, he always said, I need 328 more miles. So
Tip Chet and miles ridden.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so y'all know, like all of us that always try to tip Chet and Andy and for any of their services along the way. I know Chet will always be the first to try to refuse the tips, but if you don't know this, anytime anyone ever did get a tip to them, they've always donated every bit of that right back to Pan Ohio. So cheers to you guys. Appreciate you being with us all along every year of the ride, Chet, and looking forward to seeing you this summer again. So appreciate all you do. And again, so for everyone else, obviously this, like Chet said, there's probably 100 other things we missed tonight. Lots of things involved in bike maintenance and care. So hopefully this gave you some ideas and a starting point to help educate yourselves more. But I would encourage everyone to pick up the phone tomorrow and call your local bike shop and make that appointment to get your bike in for a tune-up sometime in the next 8 weeks. And we're about 8 weeks out from Pan Ohio. And if you can get your bike in for a tune-up somewhere around, a month to 6 weeks out, that's ideal. So you're going to be in tip-top shape, and Chet can just sit back and relax while we're on the ride, because all of our bikes are in perfect shape and taken care of.
That'll be the day.
You're not on mute.
Oh, sorry.
And I'll just throw it in. This doesn't have necessarily strictly to do with bike maintenance, but it's a rule of thumb for any event, running, cycling, whatever. Don't try to do anything new the day of the event. New shoes, new handlebars, new anything.
New bike.
Give yourself a month. If you're at least a month, get out there and try a new saddle. Oh, that would be a big one.
Yeah, don't do a new saddle.
Don't do a new
just
saddle
for your event. Test that ahead of time.
So if you're going to get into that bike shop, preferably a month early, if you're going to add any, or ask them to add any new equipment or whatever, do that then too, especially with these supply chain issues in the bike shops. Order your stuff early, have your bike that you want to ride on Pan Ohio complete, hopefully before that 4th of July weekend, and start riding that bike, and don't change anything after that.
Yeah, that goes back to what our training and nutrition panel said last month. You don't want to try any new nutrition products for the first time on the big ride. You don't want to make any major changes to your bike for the first time on the big ride either. Be used to what you're working with. But yeah, so anyway, thank you so much for all of your input. Nickie, Ted, Chet, appreciate it. Bill, thank you so much for your awesome hosting as always. With that, I'm going to just share a few event announcements very briefly. I'll fly through these, and then we can leave some open time at the end for some socializing, and we're going to do our raffles. So stay tuned for that. So again, thank you so much to all of our panelists. A couple quick announcements. If you haven't seen our registration, I know some of you are guests with us, and I know it's a little late for people to sign up, but I know people who have signed up this late to be 4-day riders. But those of you that are doing other events, I know Pelotonia is a couple weeks after us. Velasano's a couple months later. Our 1- and 2-day options are actually fantastic training rides for those other charity rides that you're doing as well. And we have brought our fundraising minimums for those 1- and 2-day rides down this year. So we would love it if you would consider checking us out even for just a day or two of that. For those of you that are registered riders, our lodging and transportation survey has launched. So if you are a 1 or 2 or a 4-day rider, an in-person rider, we need you to go ahead and fill out that survey so we know what your busing needs are, what your dietary needs are, and then also what lodging needs you might be if you're going to be with us for multiple days. So we do have our dorm cost $40 a night for double occupancy. We do have a single occupancy option this year for $70 a night. You can guarantee that you'll have a single room. As always, you can camp for free, which does give you access to shower facilities and restroom facilities in the dorms, or you can make a reservation at a local hotel. We have some partnering hotels, and our room block information is available at POHR.org. Under the more information, if you click on our lodging and logistics page, you can see all of the information about all of those partner hotels. And then, we're going to have those buses from Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati up to Cleveland, and then from Cincinnati back to Dayton, Columbus, and Cleveland at the end. So this last month's slide, we didn't change it. Yeah, that survey came out in early May. So if you did not get that and you're a registered rider, please reach out to panohioinfo@cancer.org if you did not see that email with that survey to tell us your lodging needs. And hopefully you also saw this past week that we've announced our Dynamo Club jersey. If you didn't get that email, any rider who raises $5,000 or more will join our exclusive Dynamo Club and get this additional jersey in addition to their regular event jersey. It's pretty sweet. So hopefully you're all excited about that. And then also wanted to remind everyone about the volunteer opportunities. If you know anyone that's not interested in riding, but might be interested in volunteering with us, we need to get together our army of volunteers. So we still need more SAG vehicles. If you're thinking about riding and think that maybe the distances of these days are too much for you, be assured that we have a team of SAG drivers that will help you make it through your day if you can't finish the day. So if you know anyone that is interested in supporting riders in that way, SAG drivers, we need some truck drivers to drive our luggage and bike trucks across the state and our supply trucks. We have a sign up sheet for 4-day volunteers, and then for single-day water stop volunteers. We also need some volunteers at each of our college and overnight locations each day and at the start and finish lines. So Alyssa or Sarah, if you could drop the links to those respective signups, there's some different sign-up sheets depending on which volunteer opportunities you're interested in, but we will drop all those in the chat for you here this evening. And then also wanted to remind some people about some upcoming fundraisers. And if you are hosting a fundraiser for yourself or for your team, let us know at panohioinfo@cancer.org and we can help spread the word on that for you. So first and foremost, if you have not seen Jim Bond, our founding co-chair Kathleen Bond kind of got into this idea of Pan Ohio when her husband Jim was a multiple myeloma survivor. And he wrote this amazing book called The A Man in the Arena. And it's a great story about hope and surviving myeloma, and also gets a lot into the start of Pan Ohio and the history of how our event came to be. He has generously, all of his book proceeds already go to charity, part of that to Pan Ohio, but he's generously opened that up as a fundraising opportunity to any currently registered Pan Ohio riders. If you want to sell his book, he will be donating half of the proceeds back directly to your fundraising efforts. So if you're interested in that, email panohioinfo@cancer.org. Couple other things we have coming up in a week and a half or so on June the 8th at Suds McGuire's Bar and Grill up in the Berea area. If you're in the Cleveland area, Team Mind Brain Social Club is having an awesome fundraiser. I love this, eat, drink, and be merry. For next month, we ride for hope. So if you're in the Cleveland area, consider checking that out. There's more information about all of these as well on our Facebook, and we'll be getting these posted on our website as well. Coming up on June 27th, Brian Bortz has a fundraiser coming up at Chipotle's. If you're in the Canton area, go get yourself a burrito on June 27th, and part of the proceeds of that will be going back to Pan Ohio Hope Ride. And then Rhonda Hobby has a golf outing coming up. That's actually not until August, I believe, August 20th. If you're a golfer, and I believe that's also in the Canton area, reach out to Rhonda to get you set up with that. And then again, if you have any events coming up, please let us know so we can share the info on that as well. We also have some upcoming socials and training rides. We had a social in the Central Ohio area last week, but we have some other things coming up in June in Southern and Northern Ohio. You can see those dates there. June 5th, a ride and social in Dayton. June 9th, there's a ride and a social in Lakewood, and June 18th down somewhere around Xenia Station. All of the information about the upcoming events can be found on our website too, so stay tuned to that for those and some other events that will be scheduled as we get closer to July. And then, as always, you can connect with us on our Facebook, American Cancer Society Pan Ohio Hope Ride on Facebook. We also have local Facebook groups. There's 4 of them, one for Northern Ohio, one for Central Ohio, one for Southern Ohio, and one for our out-of-state riders. So check out those Facebook groups to be in the know on all the upcoming events and rides. And then you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And we have a Slack channel. So you can email me, stacy@bearmoose.org, if you'd like an invite to our Slack channel. And that's all I got for announcements. I'm going to open it up to questions and social time. If anyone has questions about the event, any other bike maintenance questions coming up, or if anyone just wants to hang out and chat, would love to have you stick around. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa, I believe, is doing our drawing tonight. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. Go for it.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a name out here. So the first name is going to be the attendance for everyone that was in attendance for the extra incentive points this evening is Alan Skierski. Alan is I believe, first-time rider this year.
Awesome.
Is going to be getting our your incentive points. So, and then our next raffle is for new participants with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you can do me a favor, Alan, and just send me a message, a direct message as to where. Nope, I'm sorry. That's going to be for our next one that has a physical prize coming in the mail. Never mind. You don't have to do anything. You're all set.
Cool, even better. Thanks.
Awesome, no problem. So our next winner is going to be someone that has not ridden before. And you can be a guest, a volunteer, anyone that's not registered. And that is going to be, Ariel. Ariel, you are the winner of that. So I will need you to actually send me a message with your address where you would like your Pan Ohio and Determination swag bag mailed to.
She posted in the chat she had to leave early.
Oh no!
Did we get her info? Okay,
Yeah.
we'll track her down.
Yeah, whoever
We will
invited
find
her.
her.
Yeah, we'll find her.
Yeah,
Awesome.
she did.
She's
post
on
it.
my Northeast Ohio cycling page.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say she found us somewhere, so we'll find her.
Track her down and make sure she gets her
Perfect.
swag bag. Thank you. Congratulations, Ariel. Congratulations,
you.
Alan. Really excited. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Our formal program's over, but would love to have everyone stick around for social time and any other questions you may have about the ride, about bike maintenance, about what kind of beer Bill likes, whatever. And again, if you didn't see that last slide, please join us next month, especially if you are a registered Pan Ohio rider. June 28th, we're going to be having our last enrichment series of the season, the Pan Ohio 101, to learn about everything that you can expect from this year's Pan Ohio Hope Ride. So we hope we will see you all there for that June 28th. All right.